Hello, my name is Arjun Mitra, and this is a pre recorded presentation for the 2024 meeting of the Society of Mathematical Psychology. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about my work titled Changes in Time Preference Can Simply Be Induced by Changes in Time Perception. So, what do I mean by time preference? So, by time preference, I mean preferences or decisions that span across time. Imagine you are in this situation where you are given a choice between choosing a pretzel now and wait half an hour for two pretzels. Now, some of you would prefer to wait, and some of you would prefer to have it right now. Now, these decisions across time usually offer two alternate choices, the one rewarding choice that one can get now, and another better reward that manifests in the future. Usually, a willingness to wait for the later reward is often associated with higher patience or self control, and this has been studied in the literature using the discounted utility model. The discounted utility model formulates one motivation to wait as a discount factor or discount rate, which can be time invariant exponential in nature or time variant hyperbolic in nature. Often in these utility models, time is considered to be an objective or clock time. Now, what is often overlooked and what we want to talk about in this presentation is how time or how we perceive time can influence decisions that span across time. So, if waiting for 30 minutes felt like an hour to you, would you still wait for the two pretzels? Or if waiting for 30 minutes felt like 5 minutes to you, would you prefer to go for the pretzel now? So, in this work, we are going to consider two major questions. One, if we consider subjective time instead of objective clock time, how does preference of later reward change? So if mentally time seems to be extending or contracting, how does that affect the probability to wait for the future? And two, how does this time bound preference change correspond to the discount rate account of preference change? Usually, changes in intertemporal preference have always been explained by changes in discount rates. So, if you prefer to wait for the future, you have a low discount rate. What we want to see is how these subjective time based changes in probability to wait correspond to a discount rate based account of preference change. Can the same changes in preference be explained by a mental time account instead of a discount rate account? So now consider this. An agent has two different rewards they can choose from. One is a sooner reward that is available right now, and a larger reward that is available a year from now. Now, subjectively, waiting for 1 year could feel like waiting for 6 months, which is time contraction by 6 months, or it could feel like waiting for a year and a half, which is time dilation by 6 months. So, what we want to find out is how would the probability of waiting change because of this time contraction or time dilation, right? So, to figure this out, what we did is we simulated how, or if we considered subjective time, how would that lead to shift in preference. Let's say an agent starts with a smaller reward that is available right now. There's objective time TO equals to 0, and a later reward that is available 1 year from now, that is objective time TO equals to 365. Now, for different probabilities of choosing the later reward, ranging from zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.9, we find the utility of choosing the later reward. And we find this using a rearranged softmax function. Then we use this utility parameter to find the discount rate given the actual value of the later reward and objective time TO. Once we got the discount rate, what we did is we plugged in subjective time into the equations of exponential and hyperbolic discounting to find the new utility associated with the later reward, which we call U later dash. So the subjective time that we considered here is different values of time that varied from 6 months to a year and a half. And then using this U later dash, we find the new probability of choosing the later reward, which we call P later dash, using the softmax function. And finally, we plotted the change in probability of waiting corresponding to this change in perceived time as delta p versus delta t, where delta p is p later dash minus pl, where p L dash or P later dash is the newly obtained probability of later reward and PL is the prior probability of later reward that we started with. And delta T is the difference between subjective time that we considered and objective time that we started with. So just to give you a brief recap of how we simulated this is we started off with two choices, a smaller reward available now and a larger reward available later in time. Then, taking different probabilities of choosing the later reward, we estimated the utilities associated with that later reward. And using that utility, we calculated the discount rate given objective time. Once we had that discount rate, we plugged in subjective time values into the equations of exponential and hyperbolic discounting, and we calculated the new utility associated with the later reward. And using that new utility, we calculated the new probability of choosing the later reward. So, what we found is that there is a sigmoidal relationship between delta p and delta t for exponential discounting. Notably, as time dilates, as you can see in the first quadrant where delta t is positive, that is subjective time is larger than objective time, the probability of waiting for later reward decreases. And the decrease is maximum when the prior probability is high, that is p equals to 0.9. However, when time contracts, that is delta t is negative, as seen in the third quadrant, where subjective time is smaller than the objective time, the probability of waiting for later reward increases. And this increase is highest when the prior probability is low, that is p equals to 0.1. Again, for hyperbolic discounting, we find a similar curve, a similar sigmoidal relationship between bit delta p and delta t. And as we had seen before, when time dilates, that is delta t is positive, there is a decrease in probability of waiting for the later reward. And when time contracts, that is when delta t is negative, delta p increases. That is, there is an increase in probability of waiting for the later reward. So now that we have seen how subjective time can influence the probability of waiting for the later reward, we wanted to see if these changes in probability can correspond with discount rate account of time preference. What we saw in the previous sections was how the probability of waiting changed given a fixed discount rate and deviations in perceived time. Now, given a non-variable objective time, we wanted to see how those changes in probability translates to changes in discount rate. So again, here we simulated how the shifts in preference can lead to changes in discount rate. So we started with P later dash that we got for different values of subjective time Ts. From this P later dash, we found the utility associated with the later reward U later dash using a softmax function. Next, we assumed time to be objective and invariant, that is, subjective time is equal to objective time, and given our U later dash, we found a new discount rate K dash using that objective time T and actual value of the later reward AT. We do this for both exponential and hyperbolic discounting. Finally, using this K dash, we find delta K, where delta K is K dash minus K. Here K dash is the newly obtained discount rate and K is the discount rate we had previously obtained from our prior probabilities. And lastly, we plot how delta K changes with respect to delta P, where delta P is P dash minus P. Here again, P and K are borrowed from our previous simulations, where P was the prior probability of choosing later reward at objective time t that varied from zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.9 and k was the corresponding discount rate, right? So again, to give you a small recap, We started off with new probability of choosing later reward that we obtain from plugging in subjective time into the equations of exponential and hyperbolic discounting. And then from this new probability, here we calculated the utility associated with it and the discount rate, the new discount rate k dash, assuming subjective time to be equal to objective time. Finally, we found the difference in discount rate k dash minus k corresponding to the differences in probability of choosing the later reward, that is p dash minus p. Again, for exponential discounting, we find a sigmoidal relationship between delta k and delta p. As you can see in the first quadrant, as delta p increases, there is an increase in weight probability, and, and delta k is negative, that is discount rate decreases. And correspondingly, when p is negative, as in the third quadrant, there is a decrease in weight probability. We find delta k to be positive, that is there is an increase in discount rate. We find similar results for hyperbolic discounting as well. We find that as probability of weighting increases, there is a decrease in discount rate, and as the probability of weighting decreases, there is an increase in discount rate. So for both exponential and hyperbolic discounting, what we find is that as the probability of weighting increases, uh, there's a decrease in discount rate and vice versa. And as these changes in discount rate correspond to the previously obtained subjective time-based changes in probability, we think a subjective time-based change in preference can explain a discount rate-based account of shifts in preference. So now, across all these slides, the main takeaway messages are these. First, we find that as time contracts, the probability of choosing the later reward increases. And when time dilates, that is, perceived time is greater than objective time, the probability of choosing the later reward decreases. Finally, when the probability of choosing the later reward decreases, we found the discount rate to be increasing. So, what we want to say is that how we perceive time can account for observed changes in discount rates. If time is felt to be extending in nature, that is, if a year feels like a year and a half to me, my probability of waiting for a year would be lesser, and that would correspond to discounting the future more. How people have explained changes in intertemporal preference or choices is by suggesting changes in discount rates. However, discount rates or utilities are often immeasurable, especially for non monetary choices. What we simply want to say is that people's choice of waiting for the future can also be explained by how they perceive time. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to send me an email. Thank you.